but this is a bit more relaxed. But at the same time, still very, very useful exercise to get to understand what's going on. So my understanding is that I'll give an indication, an explanation relating to issues surrounding the so-called Zua petroleum judgment. What are its implications? There have also been efforts to change the law to deal with what the Zua judgment is all about. So I'll explain that. But before I do that, it's important that I give a context which is quite clear. And this context is the role of the courts in the development of the law. Where do courts come in when we are dealing with the law-making process? So here is a court. What is the implication of a court? When a court makes a decision, what happens to that? And in this case, we're a very dramatic case because it affected the lives of everyone. I would have to explain that very much. Our societies now, I think for the past 300 years or so, following what happened, especially in Europe, there was developed a concept which is sometimes called the concept of separation of powers. That a state must have three organs. An organ that makes the law, an organ that interprets the law, and an organ that is there to implement the law. There is no separation of powers in this organ. So if you have a state, if you want to organize a state properly, you must ensure that there are these three organs. But there is one organ that is there to make law. And then another organ, if you are disputing as to what the law is, you go to an organ that is there to interpret that law. And then whatever interpretation they give you, you are bound by that interpretation. But the binding nature of the interpretation is only for as far as resolving that particular dispute. Those who make the law can change the law. All right? I mean, as interpreted. And move on. Well, you say this is what the law is, but we don't want it to be like that. So I think for the future we're going to change it. It will be like that. And move on. You are there, you do that. And the others are there to implement. And society, if it is governed that way, it will operate well. So the courts are the ones that are given the responsibility of determining the meaning of the law. But the law is made by others. That's the first point I wish to emphasize. What it means is that the separation of responsibilities would actually lead to a situation in some cases, and sometimes can be many cases, where the interpretation given by the court may not be what the legislature intended. But we never intended that. Well, you are telling us this. We will try and get that. Now, my favorite example, which I give outside the university, is of a parent who sends a child to go and buy bread. Go buy bread. They give them a $20. Go buy it, bread. And then this child who is 10 or 15 reasons that, well, on the $20 note, I can have bus fare to go to town. So I'll buy my bread in town and move on. Because I can have bus fare and get out of town every day. And move on. But Pamos, go buy bread. And this person saying go buy bread is not told the child where to get it, right? Or how to get it. That is a possibility. And move on. So the child entertains an interpretation, goes to town. When they arrive in town, they find there's no bread in the shops. But there are some cakes there. But they get the cake going for about $5. And $20, even $2 if when and for $1, to and fro. There's no bread, but that $20 is about $5 where you can get a cake. So they buy a cake and they get paid. Obviously they delay because I mean if you go buy bread there and you're going to town, it might take 3 hours. So they come back 3 hours later. Not with bread but with a cake. This order. They spend more money than what the child, the parent expected. Alright? But they engage in an interpretation. Do we see that? When they get home, there are 2 or 3 possible reactions. Right? One parent might just react by, as you know, some punishment without even discussing with the child. We'll take a cake, you. And I said, go buy it, bread. But no wine of town, and so forth. You get that? Another might say, what happened? Why? The child might explain, and the parent might realize, okay, I think my instructions were not exhaustive. And they will forgive the child. But next time they will send the child, they will give the child $1. And go to the shop in the corner and buy it.
Great.
You see that's what is happening? Okay, the child is engaged in interpretation. The interpretation may not be unreasonable. And it is the fault of the parent. I didn't give sufficient instructions. But even let's assume that the child is very intelligent and they simply exploited the loophole. Go buy bread. And they had other agendas in town. And will be able to stay there and say, but just say go buy bread. And I interpret that if there is no bread, I must take an alternative, an option, which should allow us to eat something. And that's why we have to eat something. We see that. So this is the child can be very intelligent and smart. Do you see that? Now judges. So I think the point is made. My father's that's excellent. My judges, they are like that person. They may be genuinely unaware or genuinely clearly trying to say what is the proper meaning. There's no bread, and so on. Now that child might actually have gone to the nearest shop and found no bread, but decided not to go back or made their own decision that, look, I think something is wanted at home. I have to get something to eat. And they don't go back to ask for the instruction. They may be genuine, but they may also be stubborn. They may also be pursuing an agenda, but exploit the interpretation and say, but I don't want to buy property. So the theory of separation of powers, within it, it carries a lot of issues. Ideological, political, things like that. Judges are not just robots. In that they are not necessarily getting the law from God. The law is coming from their own interpretation based on what they want to achieve. If you meet a person who thinks that judges are innocent people, very committed, they just want to do nothing but the law. The judge, he's just doing his job, which is just to interpret the law. There's no such thing. Judges interpret the law. They can make it go this way or that way, depending on what the law itself allows within it. If you want to deal with a judge properly, you do that. Give them $1. Go to the corner there. Get bread. If there's no bread there, come back and we'll make another decision. That's how you treat my judges. If you don't do that, they'll carry you anyway. Which is what they did in the Zoa Petroleum case. Alright? They could carry the country to 30,000 people losing their jobs. I'm sure I get that. Now I'll tell you what was the basis for that decision, which the judges made. And then what are the limitations? Just like that child was told, look, you made a mistake. Next time, fine, I'll send you there. Because the child has no money. I don't know and to mirror the parent given the money. The child has no power. They're not affected by anyone. And you have power, they can be told, and you can change the law, make sure that the judges don't play around with it. You limit the scope of what they can do and what they cannot do. And that's what should happen. And separation of powers is all about those kind of checks and balances. So where do we start? We start from the premise that in an employment contract, there are two parties that are not equal. One is the employer, and one is the employee. Those two parties are not equal. Not at law, but if you see an employer and you see an employee, let's say there was no law. I don't think there's any one of you who would say that these parties are equal. You say we are not the employer more equal than the employee. Law comes in when other facts are already there. Law does not make facts. It regulates facts. Though I make it my facts. It don't regulate my facts. I isn't responsible for anything. It regulates what has happened. If you kill a person, law does not ask you to kill. It will deal with that consequence that you have killed. And that's so law doesn't make facts. I make my employers, I make my employees. It is the economic political situation that creates other people to be money and they employ others. And then others with nothing and they sell their labor. The only thing that you can sell is your labor power. That is the situation of the majority of the billions of people created by God. They have nothing else to sell except their labor power. Nothing else. So what happens, these who are selling labor power are not as powerful. So what happened over years is, look, let's regulate this relationship. It's a very important one. So that's where our people, most of them are in that relationship. And it is an exploitative one. So labor law came into being to regulate the employer-employee relationship, but with a view to improving the position of the employee. Because in the absence of law, the employee is at the mercy of the employer. Hakuna employee kwa anaona simba. Try to come together, become a group, exercise some authority, but ultimately the individual employee is at the mercy of the employer. So the law has come in, labor law, to just try and improve. Not to make the employee an employer, but to improve the situation of the employee. How do you improve it? You ensure that when they enter in this contract, they are not just hired and fired because they are hired, but even in the hiring, the law comes in and says, look, you can't discriminate. I'm sure you're aware that an employer is not allowed to discriminate on the basis of tribe. I'm going to employ people from Bulawayo. Change it. Out. Okay, fine, so you are near Bulawayo. That's it. You can have that. The law says there is nothing. That's the law coming in. But without the law coming in to do that, people will be free to discriminate. What do you want to play women? Are you married? Not married. Do you plan to be married? I don't know why you're so old. How old are you? 24. I think we should childbearing. Also, play some maternity. You get that? So the law says no. Now the law has always done that. The law has always come in with a like and then say, okay, but you said you're an employer. You're an employer, yes. You own the labor power. So factor 1, factor 2, don't take Tarisa labor power, my factor is or daughter zero. Lawyer opinion. Then you've taken a person. Okay, you don't want to terminate employment. Not just powerful, not at any time. Move on. Find a good reason. Once you employ a person, you cannot just terminate. The law again comes in to regulate the termination issue, employment. So that is a legitimate purpose of law. There are people who think law must not get involved. No. Law must stay out. Let's give it to the market. No, there are such things as economic forces and so on. We are better off under what are called economic forces. I'm sure I read these things, and life is better off under what is called an economic force. Yeah, we must deregulate the market. You know, the best thing in the economy, the market is efficient. All that nonsense is spread. The market is efficient. So let's leave it to the market. Alright. So, but law says where we're coming. That is how we operate in Zimbabwe. There are few countries in the world that do not apply law. They will say leave it. Under the British situation, under Margaret Thatcher, she was very prominent for saying we will not regulate. Leave it. You can work 100 hours in a day, you can move from that job to that job to that job, fine. You are paid whatever you agree with the thing, and she was saying things are better. Even in America and Reagan, maybe all these guys, they would allow that. but here we and everywhere else we belong to a group who say we must regulate. So in 1980, when we got independence, we got to have a new law here that was introduced and then was perfected in 1985 to be the Labor Relations Act 1985. That law regulated the termination employment. You cannot terminate employment unless